Yes, is that working? Yeah. Perfect, okay. Well, I mean, before the speaker thing, I was more importantly had Josh Elliott's seat in the state legislature representing Hamden. So it's good to see everyone. I was saying to the mayor, I see a lot of faces that I remember, and then a lot of faces that I don't recognize. So I'm glad I can be here tonight to help out. So what we're doing tonight is essentially a series of questions and answers for the mayor on what's happening with regard to the revale, with the budget, and with your taxes. What we're going to do, the format that we're going to take is we're going to start out with a series of questions that have already been presented to the mayor via email, so that she can answer some of those questions that I'm sure you all have as well. And then after we get through a few of those, we'll kind of go back and forth between written questions that have already been submitted to the mayor's office from folks in town via email, and then to you as well. So what we will do is, as we start going back and forth between the frequently asked questions and public questions that you're going to be asking tonight, we'd ask that you come to the microphone. There are two here, and introduce yourself and ask your question. Now, the thing that's going to be important about making this productive for everybody is that we do have to limit the questions, the amount of time that you take to ask the question and offer a comment, okay, so that way everybody can have an opportunity to speak. As the mayor said, we're scheduled to be here until 9:30, so we really want to make sure that everybody who wants to speak and wants to ask a question of the mayor has the ability to do so. So we're going to ask that everybody honor that. I'm going to keep a loose track of the time, and if it seems like it's going on a little bit, I may cajole you a little bit to finish up so that everybody else in line can have an opportunity to speak. So what's going to make this a productive evening is if everybody feels heard, if everybody has an opportunity to be heard and to speak, and then and hopefully you come away with a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more understanding of where we are than you did when you first came in. So that's my job for this evening, to help facilitate that. All right? Does that make sense? Is that good? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with those questions that have already been submitted to the mayor. And we'll go through a couple of those and ask the mayor to respond to those. There are other staff people I know here in the building who may also be able to facilitate a couple of questions and answers as well. But we'll start out with a couple of those, and then we'll go to questions and answers, and we'll straddle, go back and forth. So let's start out with those, and then I'll let you know when we're about ready to take your questions as well. All right? So, Mayor?
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Before we start.
Yeah.
I just want to say that we have a Zoom recording right now. This is not a live Zoom, it's a recording. It's going to be posted to the town's website, and we'll do that tomorrow. And I also just want to say that I understand that that this budget, and particularly the revaluation, represents a large increase in taxes. And this is something that we are all going through together. It is not what I want. It is not, I don't want to see properties like Walmart getting a tax decrease while we're all picking up the tab. That is not my personal belief system whatsoever. I think that it's important that we have short-term and long-term solutions to flip this scenario. We want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to save money, that we are doing everything that we can to find ways to ease the burden here. And we are doing everything that we can to make sure that in 5 years, when we come to another revaluation, that we're not faced with the same situation, that we have, that we're increasing commercial property values so that we are not picking up the tab for them. I understand that we have several people, several community members and families who are on a fixed income, and this is particularly challenging for them. Very challenging. I know that there are people who are not going to be able to make their budgets work. And I feel terrible for that. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that everybody understands a little bit about municipal budgeting. So in coming up with a mill rate, what we do is we use the operating budget. The operating budget is what it takes to run the expenses for 1 year. You can think of an operating budget as your checking account. You have your salary coming in, you have all of your expenses going out. And you hope at the end of the year that you have a little bit of money to put in your savings account. The savings account for the town of Hamden is our fund balance. And so it's important to have a little bit of a fund balance. It helps you to pay bills if there is an emergency. If something really bad happens and we have to make sure that we're able to fund the town, it's good to have a fund balance. All right, so do you want to go into some of the questions then?
Sure. Yeah, why don't we start with some of the questions that the mayor's already received from via email. So first question is, what is the general process of reviewing departmental requests for their budget, and who manages and works on that process?
So the budget process really starts in December and January, where departments are putting together their needs. They assess their experience from previous years and what they see coming up in the future year. They put all of these expenses together line by line in their budget. It includes salaries, it includes supplies, what they might need for vendors to come in and do some work. There's a lot that they think about when they're putting their budgets together. They have the expertise for understanding their department's needs, and they put that into their budget. Then we review these budgets together a few weeks later. I meet with them and finance, and we talk about what are the nice to haves and what are the need to haves. And I take out the nice to haves because I understand that this is a tight budget year and that the result of this budget is impacting people. And so we've made this budget really trim. We go through all of these requests. A lot of times department heads are saying, I need more people to do the work. And you'll see that within the budget, if you comb through all of the budget, you'll see that there are requests from departments where they're looking for additional people. And I've said no, because I know what it means to come to the taxpayers with additional positions. So we put all of this together, and all of the departments then get built into the budget book. And then we review again with finance, and then submit this to the legislative council in the town.
Okay. Second question. What are you doing to control spending and reduce the cost of government?
So there's been a lot that we've done to decrease spending, to control spending. One of the things that I did when I came into office was put our medical out to bid. We had for years the same broker of record, and I knew that our medical costs were higher than they should be. So we went out to bid on a medical broker. This is a person who, or a team, company that negotiates costs for the town. Negotiates drug costs, stop loss, things like that. And so by going out to bid, we saved $5 million the first year on our medical. And in the years since that, we're in our third year with that broker. The increases that we've seen to our medical has been far less than what other communities are seeing. So this year, our medical went up 3%. In Middletown, it was 16% increase. So sometimes it's not always what are you reducing, it's how are you making sure that your expenses are not going up as much as in other communities. So that's one example. Another thing that we've done is we make sure that we do more things in-house, which is really important to me. We have really great employees, they're very skilled and very capable. We do design in-house in the engineering department, and then we have public works perform the work right in our streets. We've done this with the speed tables on Mather Street. They did a fantastic job. These tables are effective, and we did it for a lot cheaper than other communities would do because they go out and they contract for this, and a company designs it and they do the work, and it's a lot more expensive. So those are some examples of what we do to try to control costs.
Okay, thank you. So next question. Why are you proposing a mill rate that will functionally raise taxes for most Hamden homeowners?
Everyone. She gave out raises. She gave out big raises.
The budget is built based off of what it takes to run the town. Now, there are things that we could do that would functionally take apart what makes Hamden great. So these are things that may not be required for us to, maybe there are some things that are not contractual. Like, we don't have to have bulk pickup. We could get rid of that. A lot of people utilize bulk pickup and rely on it, but that's something that we could get rid of. Some of the things that you would think of for savings don't really help out. Closing library branches, it's not an effective savings for the service that it provides. We have very trim departments already. So if you look at how many police or firefighters we have, or in public works, what we have for personnel, it's a lot less than a lot of other communities. And we do the best that we can with the number of people that we have. And sometimes it drives up overtime. And so we try to find the balance of the right number of personnel so that we don't have exorbitant overtime. There are places where we could use more personnel, and it's really sometimes a struggle to figure out, do we add more positions to the budget, or do we just pay some people overtime to do the work?
Now, let me just say, I appreciate the fact that everyone here is frustrated, right? What I'm asking though, is some decorum, right? So everyone can hear the answers. I mean, obviously you'll have an opportunity to express your opinion, but it would be helpful if everyone can maintain a level of decorum as we have the conversation. The mayor is choosing to do this so that she can provide you with the answers that you're looking for. You may not like all the answers, but we are asking that you kind of keep that, keep the comments appropriate and keep it. So with that, let's start with questions from you all. What I'm asking you to do, no, we're not raising hands. You come to the mic, right? If you want to stand in line, you can, but come to the microphone, announce yourself, and ask your question. Keep the question and the comments to 3 minutes, okay? So everyone has an opportunity to speak. And we'll straddle. We'll go between the questions that you're asking and some of the questions that have already been presented to the mayor. Okay? So we'll start here.
Is it permissible to make some comments rather than ask a question concerning the process?
Sure. You have 3 minutes, so, and if you can remember to say who you are, where you live. We prefer if you don't take that all apart. If you just stand in the mic and just speak.
My name is Michael Millar, and I wanted to make some comments about a phase of the budget process that would benefit the homeowners. And in this day and age, this year in Hamden, it was very similar to what happened in North Haven 20 years ago. There was a huge increase in the average cost or value of homes and a very small increase in the commercial property. And I believe the numbers are here, 55% average home increase, 30% for the commercial property. So the budget is determined through the process, and the budget and the total value of all the taxable property determines the mill rate. And so there is a process called phase-in, which was used in North Haven very successfully 20 years ago. And I believe an example would be a 3-year phase-in. So the average homeowner pays about $650 a month in taxes up to this year.
Way more than that.
And
More?
can we, yeah, each speaker has 3 minutes.
This is just an
Take your
example.
time away.
If you're paying $650 a month, you're probably gonna get a $50 or $60 increase for the budget because there needs to be 23 or 24 million put into the new budget. And then there's the revaluation, we'll call it a tax, and that'll be another $60. So let's assume there'll be a $120 a month increase. If you phase in, then the residential homeowners would save 1/3 of that, say 2/3 of that the first year, or 80 of the $120, or whatever number that turns out to be, you save 2/3. The second year, you save 1/3, and the third year, you pay the amount. It does not cost the town, it's merely delaying the savings or the reduction in taxes that the commercial sector would get. And in North Haven, we saved $6 million when I was there years ago. So that's one thing we can do. I don't think there's any downside, and hopefully that'll be discussed later in detail. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question.
We certainly are looking at different phase-in options, because we do want to provide some relief. So we're looking at a potential phase-in, working with the legislative council on possibly delaying the grant list, for 1 year. That requires, state legislation for us, but, we are looking at all possibilities to try to, just alleviate some of this burden and try to provide some, even if it's temporary, some relief.
Mayor, can I ask you, just as a follow-up to this gentleman's question, can you explain what the revaluation is?
Sure. The revaluation, it takes a few years actually for this process. We had to put the money together. It costs over $1 million for this revaluation, unfortunately. You have to do a revaluation every 5 years. So one of those 5-year revaluations, you have to do a larger revaluation, and then after 5 years, you can do kind of like an overview revaluation that's not as in-depth. It's kind of like a flyover reval. But this one was our big revaluation this year. What they do is we have assessors that go out and assess every single property. You have residential property, commercial property, industrial property. We also have property that is non-taxed, like colleges, universities, and hospitals. We take this property and assess it because we get money from the state to reimburse us for the lost tax revenue. It's called pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. So it's important that we're still even assessing the non-tax properties to make sure that we're getting as much as we can from the state to reimburse us for those properties as well. So all of the properties are assessed based on fair market value. So we're looking at the market conditions that exist. So sometimes you see bidding wars on properties, and property that was originally at 300,000, it was put on the market for 350,000, and then a bidding war drove the price up to 400,000. Well, that's the new market value for that home, and that drives the market value for all of the revaluation. So that's kind of the condition that we're dealing with right now. And then when it comes to commercial properties, you have a lot of different types of commercial property. The apartment buildings went up about 40%, whereas like retail was 10 to 20%. You have office space that didn't do anything, it remained flat. And so, those are the fair market values for those different types of properties. And that's really how the grand list has changed, shifted the tax burden from commercial to real estate, which is what we're all experiencing. And I also want to clarify something that I've seen a little bit. We did a reval in 2020, and so some people think that the next reval was due in 2025. What the state did between then and now is they set up a schedule. There were a lot of municipalities that were doing their revaluation all at once, and then another year you'd have not as many revaluations. So to provide consistent work year over year, the state set up a schedule so that each municipality was told when they needed to have their revaluation done and for which grand list. And so our revaluation by state statutes on the state's website, if you look up Connecticut revaluation schedule by municipality, you'll see right on the schedule that Hamden's was due October 1st, 2024. That's by state statute. And so we had to do it for this budget cycle.
So the practical effect of a revaluation, which occurs, as you said, every 5 years, every 10 years for the major revaluation and 5 for the interim, is that there's a rebalancing that occurs since the previous reval. So what you're saying, and I think what the reval is pointing out, is that since 2020, pre-COVID, that residential properties increased dramatically post-COVID, and commercial properties less so, for a whole lot of reasons we all understand. So that's the reason why when you do a reval, there's a rebalancing that has to occur. In principle, when you increase certain values, the mill rate can drop, but it's a balancing act as to how much you can drop the mill rate to be consistent across the board. Is that, I mean, that's kind of I've been through a few of these myself, so I know that that's kind of the reality that you're trying to explain. So let's take a question from this gentleman.
I got a couple, hopefully I can get in at the time. Walter Daly, District 6. How do you justify handing out 15 to 18% raises, self-included? By saying, well, that's what other similar towns our size pay their people. Because if that's the case, you phase it in. People might be losing their homes, and you're asking for 20% raises?
Right.
Who in this room has ever gotten a 15%
Never.
raise? That's where leadership starts, at the top. So can you justify that?
So I'd be more than
Do
happy.
you have other questions? Because I want to give you 3 minutes. But
Sure.
Okay.
And how do you justify building a community center when homes there's homes across the street crumbling, and you want to build a community center that's not on a major bus line, and nobody really wants it. This is another photo op there, Gary. We need a fire station. For 50 years. If you disrespect his memory with a photo op saying you're going to name an animal shelter after him and not get going on it, well, there's going to be a lot of people coming for your job and the LC jobs too. So don't. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. So Mayor, could you respond?
Of course. So with your first question about raises, there is a spreadsheet that is going around that I've seen that was part of an attachment that we put on the budget. It is not what we are proposing for raises. So the attachment is
In the budget, it's in the budget.
the attachment shows the study that we asked Palti to perform. A company called Palti put together, I'm answering the question.
Please stop
Palti
interrupting. Let them
put
answer.
together a salary comparison study for us. And it shows the difference between what we pay our employees and what other municipalities are paying their employees. There is a gap there for some employees, not all of them, but for some. We took that gap and we did phase it in. So we put it in 25% of that gap for this year. We live in a union environment and salaries are going up for our union employees.
You're living in a union environment.
And so the salary that I proposed was 25% of the gap. And in no cases did anybody's salary go up by 20%. And furthermore, I did not propose a salary increase for myself. I never have. If you look at the budget for the mayor's office, there is not a salary increase for the mayor.
The community center was the other
Okay.
question.
I think it's important that we look at the funding that we've received. Funding from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, it's the COVID money, money from state grants. we are building, we are improving our infrastructure, and we are taking care of some town needs with a lot of different funding. We have money that we're using from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, to build the community center. I've spoken with a lot of youth who do want the community center.
I want to afford to live in the town my parents grew up in.
I think it's also important to look at, if we look at the Dalio report, this was a study that was done about disengaged youth. We have 119,000 disengaged youth in our state. And these are people who are failing out of school, not able to get jobs after they graduate. They are functionally not contributing to society, and we want to help them get there. So by giving them a place that they can go to for some job coaching, workforce development, I think that we can help engage with them and help them be productive members of society.
Why don't we take
I
a
think
vote
it's
here?
also important to make sure that we're looking at doing more than one thing. We're not just building a community center. We are fixing structural problems and water intrusion issues in Foundation to Newhall. We are currently studying and developing designs for construction. We have Ely and Aldridge that we're under contract with. They are developing designs so that we can go out to bid. We have an RFP that is almost ready. It needs an attorney to review the RFP so that we can go out to bid for construction of the structural problems and water intrusion. We have already sent in a grant application for the construction phase for the Newhall foundations. We are working with our state delegation to make sure we get this money. I've worked with Senator Looney, he's the Senate president, and he is supportive of this. He will make sure we get this money. This area is also, it is on a bus line. And I'm glad you brought that up because we have bus rapid transit. It's another grant that is coming into Hamden and New Haven. Bus rapid transit is coming up Pixel Avenue from New Haven up to, we're hoping to extend it to Skiff Street. So bus rapid transit will help us to redevelop Dixwell Avenue, provide pedestrian and traffic safety improvements. We're also applying for a grant this year. It's a joint application with New Haven where we can do economic development improvements, pedestrian safety improvements, some connectivity improvements, all along Dixwell Avenue so that people are able to commute faster by bus than they can in a car. So bus rapid transit has a dedicated bus lane, as well as if there are any traffic signals, it makes the traffic signal turn green so that the bus can go through. It'll also mean that we have traffic circles to make the commute faster on Dixwell Avenue. So massive traffic improvements along Dixwell Avenue to follow up this grant. We are also working on designs for a fire station and an animal shelter at the corner of Putnam and Dixwell Avenue. I'm sorry, Putnam and Gallagher Road. And we have some preliminary cost estimates for the animal shelter. It's probably going to cost about $2 million, and we have $1 million set aside. We are so much further along in building an animal shelter than we ever have been before.
We're still 20 years behind.
Thank you. So let me go back before we go to questions from the public. So one of the questions that you've received via email, why is the Board of Ed not being flat funded in this budget? The question is, why is the Board of Ed not being flat funded in this budget?
So right now, we're in an environment where there are serious threats to education funding from the Trump administration. In addition to that,
Last year
we
too?
have on the Board of
last year too.
Okay, can we please keep it down so that everyone can hear the answers to the questions that you're asking? Thank you.
You gotta blame somebody.
In the Board of Ed's budget, they have contractual obligations for salaries. Teachers are union employees, they have contractual obligations. We have a contractual obligation with the bus company. Transportation is incredibly expensive. We have obligations to educate students, special education students included, and we need to make sure that we're doing right by our special education students. The governor's budget and his proposals for special education are actually pretty good. He is providing more funding for special education. He is providing grant funding for building out education services for special ed. If you need a special education classroom, he's providing grant funding for that. I think that it's really important that our Hamden Public Schools are prepared for this funding. I want to make sure that they are ready to submit grants for construction, that they are ready to submit other grants for operations for special education. We will receive more funding from the state of Connecticut for special education if we are prepared to educate more special education students in-house. I don't want to decimate their budget and effectively leave them without the ability to prepare for those grants in the future.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go back to the questions from the public.
Thank you. My name is Regina Mullings. I have a question about the budget. You said that in December and in January, the budgets are submitted by your different departments. I want to know when they have that budget for the year, when the money is not spent, first of all, does it roll back over into the next budget? Or do they keep those monies within that budget and then they're offered an opportunity to increase the budget when they have not already spent what they had from the year before? And if so, where is that money going when it's being divided up between the departments?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. So each year, let's use an example of Public Works. Let's say they budget for their salaries, they budget for overtime for when we have a tornado. They budget for snow overtime when they have to plow the roads. They budget for salt, supplies, if there are building improvements that are needed, if we have trucks that are breaking down, they budget for repairs. We buy a lot of supplies in Public Works that are used in our parks, in our buildings, and so if they don't spend down their budget fully, it gets dropped to the bottom line, and those savings go into balance out anything in the budget that maybe had a shortfall. But overall, if the budget had a surplus, meaning that there were enough savings in the budget, that falls down into the fund balance, which is like a savings account for the town, and that can be saved year over year. The operating budget is only for 1 year, so anything that is not spent during the operating budget's fiscal year, it would fall to the fund balance.
Okay, so I'm asking you that because in Lower Hamden, I've been noticing around the Pine Rock area, we have homeless people that are living in the woods. And we have people who are dropping trash like it's the dump. And so we can anytime go near Southern Connecticut, there's tires, there's stuff out there. And I'm watching the people go to the park and clean up the park. But then when you come out of the park, you see the trash there and no one's cleaning it up. And it's disgusting because when you drive into Hamden, I'm getting tired of seeing everybody's goods out on the streets.
So I'm making a note of it, and I'll make sure that we send somebody up to clean up outside of Pine Rock Park.
Okay, we're
My name is Cheryl, my wife is Camille. I live on Pine Rock. I've been living in Hamden for about 10, 11 years. I have my business here, and I love this town. But I'm having a situation here where I'm paying a little more in taxes than mortgage. And I'm like, you know, on a, like this, like, should I stay here? Should I move? Should I stay here? And then, I heard about the young lady said I live right, my backyard is right at Pine Rock Park. I worked with the homeless people for 15 years in New Haven. So I know about mental health, I know about substance abuse, and I've been there working in New Haven while I was living here in New Haven, in Hamden, as a community activist. And I play a lot of roles in my community, and feeding the homeless and all of that. We do not need people living in that park. We have people. With tics. We have people who live around there where they can just walk in our backyard. I have screens on my window when I want a breath of fresh air and could come into our houses. It's a dangerous situation to have. We have our kids sliding down the sled back here. We do not need people living here. So what I need to ask, Lauren, I respect you, love everybody here, but I voted for you. I thought that we were it was gonna get better. I need to know what can we do to fix some of these situations. What are you gonna do moving forward for us, the community? What can you do?
Thank you.
So there are a few things that we're doing to try to help homeless people. One of the things that the Legislative Council set aside in the ARPA budget was $1 million to fund the Community Action Network. This is money that runs through United Way, and it's to help us address some of our homeless population. We have people who go out to any homeless people when they're able to find an encampment to address medical needs, to provide services for housing, to suggest temporary housing, and help them find a place to live. We want to make sure that they have any personal supplies that they need. We want to make sure that they have access to food. We are doing a lot of work to help try to find alternative places for people to live.
You got
All right.
extra tents for the
I need to
residents
ask
here?
this, Ms. Lauren.
We're gonna need them.
So you are welcoming people to live in Pine Rock Parks and tents? When there was no one there a few weeks ago, when I checked, because my house is right there, and my kids walk through a path in the woods, 2 little girls, and we got girls and kids that live around here that walk through there, and people living there is not a good look. I need to know, are you welcoming people to live there?
I'm not suggesting that people live in any particular park. I think we have people who are homeless. Our economy is not going to be getting better right now, unfortunately. And I think that it's important that we address the homeless population and try to provide services. I think it's also really important that we provide more affordable housing to get people into homes. So we have worked with developers. We've gotten a grant for almost $10 million to build affordable housing on State Street. It is really affordable at 60% AMI. All of the units are affordable. And we have affordable housing that we're trying to put throughout town. One of the biggest challenges we have in the housing market right now and why prices increase so substantially is because there's a shortage of housing, which has created a lot of demand. So we want to make sure that there is more housing available for people so that we can bring them out of homelessness.
I have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry, there are other people in line.
Did you invite them to come live in
I have never, ever invited somebody to be homeless.
No, she did not say that. She did not say that.
All right, so
So
if
no,
you're
I'm
leaving
not-
here, believe this, they definitely did, because we don't need that here in our community.
Okay.
I need to know that.
Okay, I understand, and I think the mayor's answered, so let's move on to the next question. Yes,
Hi, Mike Canair, and I'm in N40, Parker Turnpike. And Lauren, thank you for coming tonight. And I don't see your bulletproof vest, but perhaps you should have one of them. I appreciate all you have done. What's going on here, this tax disaster is not your fault, it's the fault of multiple administrations before you, and the continuing story. And my question is, after so many problematic administrations resulting in a 20% or more tax rate, which a lot of people here cannot afford, they can afford to live here. What about the use of the Municipal Accountability Review Board, MARB? It is another word for not bankruptcy, but reorganizational bankruptcy planning. It provides financial stability and a more disciplined approach to budgeting, but its advantages are, which will be very appealing to people here. Stabilizes finances, disciplines budgeting, improves auditing practices, but most importantly here for us is it helps with employee benefit management, including ancient contracts which are bankrupting us. Labor contracts cannot be reopened by the town unless it is under state supervision. And then old labor contracts with benefits which were excessive in the old days, and still are, and compound yearly, can be reopened. And in addition, the MARB, as it's called, provides funds to help with deficit or near deficit spending. And I mean, you know, we say, oh, you went from 55 to 43, but that's horrible math. You know, if we've been using last year's assessments, the mill rate would have had to go from 55 to about 70 using last year's assessments. So maybe we need outside help, which is not. When a budget is formed, there's all sorts of political forces going on. You need almost a Doge approach here. An outsider looking in to help us out. The state has those facilities to help us out, and maybe some more people here can keep their houses.
Thank you for the question. Any questions? Mayor, do you want to speak to the question of Mark?
All right, so the town already reports to the MFAC, which is the Municipal Finance Advisory Commission. The state really dictates who qualifies for MARB. If you look up municipal fiscal indicators at the Office of Policy Management, they have a list that they publish every year for who qualifies for MARB. And they have a matrix that you can look at. You have to be negative in your fund balance. If you have any bond ratings that are below a certain threshold, there are a lot of different key markers for qualifying for MARB. Hamden does not qualify for MARB. We do qualify for the MFAC, and we report to them about every 2 months. And we talk to them about our previous year's experience, our current budget, and the next year's budget. So we meet with them regularly, and my experience in being in the MFAC is that they are very helpful. They are supportive if you need help. They are willing to kind of drill down into our finances, and they have been appreciative of a lot of the changes that we've made in our budgeting. I also want to just highlight some of the impacts of being in MARP. West Haven is tier 4 in MARP, which is the worst that any municipality has ever been in MARP. Many communities are at tier 2 or tier 3. West Haven went to tier 4. They did not change any union contracts. What they did was they said that if you want to spend anything over $50,000, the state has to approve it. They also made West Haven jack up their mill rate to make sure that they were budgeting appropriately. And so a lot of times when you're in MARP, what happens is your mill rate goes up.
Thank you. This gentleman here.
There we go.
Can you hear it now? Can you give us your name and where you live?
Richard Izero, 80 years in Hamden. I know from the very beginning, 80 years ago, how wonderful a town this was. And how it's changed in many ways, some for the good and some for not so good. Okay, even in our education department. I asked for an appointment, we never gave me one. Okay? I have some suggestions. I put my name down for an appointment and he fluffed me off. All right? Now, there's one thing there's two things I want to bring out, okay? And that is, there's so many houses for sale in our town. What's the reason now all these houses are for sale, popping up every day? It can't be that things are so good as you portray, that you've got all the answers for everything, but yet all these houses are popping up. Something has to be done. We've been burdened with taxes for 50 years. I'm not saying you're the only one. There's been many people with pushing our taxpayers to the limit. Okay? Another thing I want to bring out, we're talking about a cultural center, a community center on New Wall Street. Am I correct? Okay. You didn't do your homework. Because underneath that ground, okay, there's so much poison and death. And that's the reason that the school, MJ Whalen, went kaput. Because of arsenic, mercury, lead, etc. Okay? There's many people who have contacted cancer because of that land. Many students, many teachers. I've known, because I'm a former teacher. I've known many of them. Okay? They didn't live past 59. Okay? So nothing should be built on that land. You gotta look into it.
Housing prices are so steep right now is because there aren't a lot of houses on the market. I was on the legislative council and I remember it used to be 700 homes in Hamden were for sale. It's not like that anymore. It's less than 100 homes for sale. So it's important to know that part of the reason that housing values have gone up so substantially is because it's a seller's market. There is not a lot out there for housing stock. With regard to the New Hall property, that property was remediated by the Regional Water Authority under a consent order with the state of Connecticut. The remediation was completed a few years ago, and in 2023, the state Department of Energy and Environmental Protection issued a certificate of completion to the Regional Water Authority that soil has fully been remediated. And so
Not all the way
it
down.
is remediated to the standards of the state of Connecticut.
Okay, let me just, let me go back to a question that's relevant also for the, one of the earlier questions that was just asked. So one of the questions that you received via email was, how did you grow the fund balance to improve the bond rating of the town? And did that cause other problems that are contributing to the issues that we're facing now?
Thank you. So the fund balance was grown in two different ways. One that I've already talked about a little bit, when you have savings throughout the budget in departments, and those savings drop down to the bottom line and get put into the fund balance at the end of the year. So by savings within the budget. The other way, and this was started before I was mayor, because the town went negative in the fund balance back in from the 2020 budget. This was fiscal year 1920. The town went negative in the fund balance by about $2 to $3 million. And the state required that the town of Hamden develop a plan to restore the fund balance. And so the previous administration at the time put together a fund balance restoration plan. And the way they did this was they took some of our debt, our general obligation bonds, and restructured them so that there were savings in the front end, savings from paying principal payments in full, and push that debt out further. The savings that were in the principal part of the debt service payment, instead of taking all those savings, they budgeted for the full amount of debt service and then used that savings that was built up and put that into the fund balance. So the consequence of that is that it increased the amount of debt that we owe to pay more into the fund balance. So there were consequences to that plan. And again, that was a plan that was established before I was mayor and was carried out over a few years. This is debt refunding, debt restructuring. It is not a good fiscal practice. It is something that I'm against, something that I will not be doing in the future.
Thank you. Is it also, just the other part of that question was, what is that doing to the town's bond rating, though, in terms of having more of a fund balance?
Well, so by having a fund balance, we have increased our bond rating. There are 3 different rating agencies that we use. All 3 rating agencies have increased our rating. This work has been done over the last 3 years. One of those rating agencies increased us by 2 notches, and that is typically not something that happens. We kind of looked up some municipalities where they've gotten a double notch increase, and it was, I think it's happened in Detroit where they, it was during like a takeover where the state was assuring their bonds. So it's a really great improvement that we've made and a great accomplishment for the town.
Thank you. Okay. So this gentleman here.
Hi, my name is David Axel. I have 2 at my house here and my business here. I moved here in 1990, and all I did was watch my taxes increase at extraordinary rates. And this is the first time I've seen this type of anger from my patients, from my neighbors. Marjorie Bonadies was my neighbor. She moved out of town because she couldn't pay the taxes anymore. You have a vision of this town. These people have a different vision of this town.
Yes, right.
I like your vision of the town, but it's not affordable. This is a message out there. You need to not raise taxes right now. I cannot go back to my people and say, you need to pay me more because I can't do that with insurance companies. They have a flat fee, what they're gonna pay me. I have a contract with them, I can't charge my patients. So I have to lower my expenses. I understand you have contracts that you have to, they're obligated with unions. All I'm saying is, if you couldn't get money from us, what would you do? And that's the mentality that the town has to take this time. Because I do remember one time, and you remember, Brendan, and I appreciate you here, is when the town got so pissed off that they voted for a Republican. Will not pay for that vision. My patients will not pay for that vision. So you have to figure out, how do I do a zero tax now? Whether it means I have 25 students and I have 21 students in the classroom, whether it means I can't hire more firemen, even though I know I need more firemen. Whatever it takes is your mentality now, but the one thing you have to say is, I can't raise these people's taxes. That's the single most important thing. It's not, the community centers are nice when you have a surplus. We don't have a surplus. You cannot go back this time. You can maybe in 2 years, but not now. That's all I can say.
I think it's important to understand that we are working with a lot of different pots of money. And the mill rate is derived from the operating budget. What it takes to plow the roads and put police officers on the streets and firefighters available to respond to for medical calls. There are other budgets that we have from grants, from capital budgets that are totally separate from the operating budget. So if we are building a firehouse, it is not coming from the operating budget. If we are building a community center, it is not coming from the operating budget. In fact, if we're doing a legislation that doesn't impact the operating budget at all, the proposal for the youth center is to put a fuel cell on it, so that we're not even paying for electric costs to run that building. So I want to make sure that what we're looking at for our operating budget is the basic needs of the town. Our basic ability to respond to emergencies, our basic ability to put officers on the streets, to put firefighters in the firehouses and able to respond to medical emergencies, our ability to plow roads when it snows. We don't have a budget that provides anything fancy. We're picking up trash. We are making sure that we are, I would say most of our town departments are required by charter, and they are effective at making sure that we are developing the town. If we decimate our town offices, our budget, it will leave us totally unable to build the future, to actually get economic development in any way, shape, or form. And it will leave us with zero ability to change this in the future. If you want to grow yourself out of getting taxed into oblivion, we actually have to invest in the town. I don't want to see roads and bridges crumbling. This is something that we are trying to address through my administration. But it definitely get a lot worse, unfortunately. So the budget that I propose is not fancy, it's not extra, it's running the basic needs of our town. Part of the problem that we're all dealing with is decades of mismanagement. Back in the 90s, when they weren't investing anything into the pension fund.
That's an old story that's been kicked down the road year after year.
Nothing into the pension fund. And then a few years later, they decided, well, there's no money in there, let's borrow $125 million to invest in the pension fund. And so now we are paying the amount that is determined by actuaries that we are legally obligated to pay into the pension fund. Plus, we're paying back the loans that were borrowed to invest in the pension fund. We pay $8 million a year to pay back just the loans that were invested into the pension fund.
Lower your
So-
salary.
We have expenses that are extraordinary from decades of mismanagement that we have to pay back now. It makes it more expensive to run the operating budget for the town. And that's really unfortunate, but we are running the operations of the town with less staff than a lot of other municipalities are able to rely on.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hello, my name is Lushonda Howard. Although there are many questions I can ask, I'm really just up here to make a comment. As someone that has worked with the youth for many, many years, I just want to tell you that community is not in a building, it's in the people. It's in our children. So if you just took a portion of the millions of dollars that you have for ARPA funding and put it into the nonprofits in our community and fund those, that will be the community for our children. And it won't be in one place, it'll be all over Hamden, from the 1st district to the 9th district and everywhere in between. Because I can tell you that a child that is going home to crumbling foundations and water in their basements does not care about going into a building. The remainder of the money should go to fix these foundations. The foundations should be first. That would be a true legacy for you.
I think it's important to know that we can do both.
No, we can't.
We're getting funding for our foundations, and we do have the funding to build a youth center. And what I've also heard from a lot of youth leaders is that they do need a place to have programming in a building. We're not going to be able to provide programming if there is not a safe, secure location for people to have youth programming.
You do it in the schools, after school.
The schools would be great if we had access to the schools.
The nonprofits are building, the nonprofits are building.
Yeah, no one keys.
We have folks in the room who cannot hear what the mayor's responses are. Please keep it down, okay?
We want to be heard loud and clear. How mad we are.
We understand, that's why the mayor's here.
No, I don't think you understand. I think you're just telling us this is how it's gonna be, and take it or leave it. You never have, you never did. Thank you.
So I also just want to mention that the meeting's being recorded, so only when you are using a microphone will the microphone on Zoom
I'll repeat it again.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I wanted to just address the rest of the question. I think that it's really important that we have safe locations for kids to be mentored after school. And the schools are not available for us to just have programming every day of the week. It's expensive. It's expensive for the schools. So we want to make sure that we have staff available in the afternoons for programming for kids.
Who's gonna run the community?
Okay, please. Let her answer the question,
We have
please.
talked to the Boys and Girls Club, but the problem that we have with utilizing our schools all the time is that it is expensive for them to have a custodian on duty for all of the hours that we want to make sure that we're available to kids. And so they don't let us come into the schools. It's really, we will provide the janitors for the community center. We also have staff that work in other buildings that can go into into the new community center. The janitors, the custodians that are in the schools, they have to be Board of Ed employees. Union contracts also work in the way where people have set job descriptions and set duties. And we can't put our custodians into the schools because it would be the custodians for the Board of Education work.
Thank you.
That'll be your next year.
I'm not cutting the line in the meetings. My name is George Levinson. I live on Shepherd Avenue. And I've been watching this budget for 15 years in detail. And this budget has really serious problems. Just to describe a couple of them, the budget itself has grown $13.5 million from last year. The taxpayer portion of that has grown $23.3 million from last year. That's just not acceptable.
No.
And the number one problem is the Board of Education budget, which is going up 3.6. That is, I've looked in detail at the school budget and it is outrageous. They are insatiable, and we could give them $10 million more. It wouldn't be enough. Next year, they'd be coming out with their hands out again. So it's time to say no mas to the school budget. That's 3.6 off the top. Okay. The other things are, I'm sorry to say, and I've told the mayor previously, the police and fire spending is outrageous. And the police, she had an opportunity. She walked in, this year there were 30 retirees, and she replaced every one of them. This is in a town where you only have 7 cops on the road at any given time. What do we need 102 police for?
Right.
So that's, there may be places that need more. I'm not saying that's not true, but they need to make do with what they have. We just hired over 30 policemen. And by the way, the cost of police and fire particularly is going to go up every year because of the pension. We have been paying, we are current with the pension plan, but what nobody has really realized is that the state pension, which we signed on for in 2007, which was a big mistake. There was only a handful of towns that actually did it. They not only get paid for the glorious defined benefit pension, but they also get that pension calculated with overtime, which this town plan has never had. So the town is going to get worse when those people start retiring. And so the bottom line is we need less spending there. Oh, and by the way, this year, the reason why the taxes are going up $23 million from last year is that the town revenue, the departmental revenue has dropped by $9 million. I don't know why, but maybe it was just overstated last year. But it just doesn't, the way it's balanced is just horrible.
And whose error was that?
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let me just remind folks, we were planning to take a bio break at 8 o'clock.
Nope. It's just a quick bathroom break.
But I also just want to thank everyone who's come to the mic, because you've been really good about keeping your comments within a reasonable time frame. So thank you for that as well, because it's allowing everybody to get their chance to speak. So, yes, Ken.
Well, it's easy while you two sit there, and we have elderly people standing for nearly an hour.
Why don't, then maybe what you can do is get to the end of the line and let the elderly get in front of you.
Does that guy even live here and he's talking to our residents like that?
My name is Debbie Douglas. I've been a resident of Hamden for over 52 years. I lived here. All I've seen in the last 10 years is taxes increase. Services are less and less. And I'm here with this letter because my big issue, besides the taxes, I went through the abatement, all that rebate stuff, which was really not helpful because mine was reduced by $10,000, right? But I didn't get a letter. I didn't get information on it to follow up. I waited a good 2 hours, went through the whole appointment, pictures, everything. It was the most awful process. But why I'm here today is because we need a mayor for the people. You're supposed to when you came by my house in Westwoods many years ago when you were campaigning with your daughter, you talked to me and I said, she looks real. She looks like someone I can connect with. I have no connection with you.
Nobody.
I went to your office a month ago with a complaint about the transfer station, that garbage that's going on there, that people who don't live in Hamden are coming and putting dumb things in. I go in with a mixed load. I end up having to pay because it's a mixed load. I wrote a 1-page letter to you. I have it here because you never responded. I $9,000. I give more than I get. I want to talk about bulk pickup. I had to make an appointment. I didn't grow up having to do that. Why do we have to make an appointment? When we call, oh, tell us what you have. 1, 2, 3, this is what you have. It shouldn't be like that. Other towns don't have to do that. They don't pay as many taxes. My friend in Windsor, she gets bulk twice a month. They say 3 items. You go to Hamden, I'm gonna spend $30 at the transfer station. Why should I have to pay that when I'm paying almost $9,000 for taxes? And you are so disingenuous as you talk to people as if you're not one of us. We voted you in, and we can vote you out. So I'm gonna hand give it to you today. It's minor, but I have people who are afraid to put things out because they won't pick them up, because they don't know the process to call. And you have elderly people who can't afford to have a bulk, a bin, as you want people to do, and to go to the transfer station is garbage. The transfer station is garbage. They have good people there, but they've been pressured to do this nonsense about weighing, to be accountable for the contractors coming in. We need to have a discussion about that. That was just done. Give us an outline as to how much money you're saving so we can go back to the way it was. It should be the way it was, that people who don't live in Hamden, let them pay. But people who live in Hamden, show IDs and let us do it the right way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so with regard to the transfer station, what we were seeing very regularly is that people would bring a U-Haul filled with an apartment, everything from an apartment. People would do an apartment clean out, a house clean out, fill up a U-Haul and bring it to the transfer station. And then they would put somebody with a Hamden driver's license on the front seat. And that Hamden driver's license got them free access so that they could dump all of that garbage into our transfer station and make all of our taxpayers pay for it. That trash was not necessarily coming from Hamden. It was just, somebody had a Hamden driver's license, handed it over, and they had free access to the transfer station. What we've done is we've weeded out that abuse of the transfer station. We have gotten, there are no longer big U-Hauls filled with garbage because it's too expensive for them to dump in Hamden. We have not seen a large increase in the amount of bulk that's dumped around town. We have a litter crew that goes to address all of that. It is not substantially changed from what we would see in previous years. People are paying a small fee, and I think it is important to note that if you have a mixed load, if you have organic materials like leaves and branches, and you have materials that are municipal solid waste, if you bring them in at the same time together, you will get charged a higher rate for municipal solid waste. It is better to separate your the two parts of materials to make sure that you're not paying excessively. The other thing is that we have bulk pickup that you can have, it's going to be 2 times a year. Because we had a townwide bulk pickup in October, for the last 6 months, so January through June, you have 1 bulk pickup that is scheduled by appointment. We did this to save money. The company, All American Waste, that collects our garbage, was not going to be able to continue with the bulk pickup the way that it had been done previously. It's expensive for them to have a bunch of garbage trucks in Hamden for just 2 months out of the year. It's more economical for All American Waste to have by appointment only. We made this change to save money. What I'm hearing from a lot of people is please find ways to cut expenses and to save money. We are doing that, and we will continue to do that. And those decisions might make you mad. I'm seeing that, believe me. But those decisions save money. I'm going to continue to find ways to save money, even if it makes a couple of people a little bit mad. Because we can't continue to pay the same expenses that we've been paying. I know that other communities do things a little bit differently. They're set up differently. I know that in North Haven, they collect trash. They have union employees collecting trash. So that it doesn't matter what you put out in North Haven, curbside, they'll pick everything up. We don't have town employees collecting curbside. We contract this out through All American Waste, okay? And so we kind of have to go with what All American Waste suggests as the most economical. It was either don't do bulk pickup anymore or do it by appointment only. I think what's really convenient about doing it by appointment only is that not everybody has needs to get the bulk out of their house on either October or April. Sometimes they have a need on a different month. And now they can schedule it when it's convenient for them. But it is a way that we are already saving because you don't have piles where people are adding to the piles from out of town or people are adding to their own piles throughout the entire month. So it has been a savings for the town in terms of what ends up in the dumpster. So we pay tipping fees on everything that's collected. Our tipping fees have gone down because of the new bulk process. Our tipping fees have also gone down because there is less stuff coming into the transfer station. So this is a way that we are saving money.
Thank you. Yeah.
My name is Claire, and I've lived in Hamden for most of my life. I was educated here, received a fabulous education, and went on to bigger and better things. We are all here tonight because we are at a peak at how much money a retired person has, or even a working family. How many jobs can they have? How much money can a retired person stretch a dollar? Okay. The town of Hamden has to learn the word no. We all had to teach our children that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't have that. Is the budget very tight? Would you say the budget is stringently tight? Then why did the other night, the board, make this a welcoming city and to allow this poor gentleman who lives near a field to have tents placed on that field and cause unsafe conditions? That's your responsibility, to keep everyone safe. Everyone. And We have a great fire department, we have a great police department, and that's how we want to keep it. And there are ways to do that with whom we have in the departments today. But my main, and one other thing regarding education, and I'm a strong believer of education. This town, generally the town is under 50%, in the bottom 50% in the rankings of the state. Helen Street School, their math is 20% grade level and 30 to 45% reading. I went to Helen Street School. We were 100%. What has changed? I'm not gonna give you up my age, but what has changed in these decades? We need to look at education because in this town, we spend 31,000 and change on one student. The average student in the state of Connecticut is 25,000. So we are already a lot over the national or the average for the state. Where is this money going? What kind of programs? Because these kids aren't stupid. It's just that they're not being taught correctly. And they don't understand this new math or anything else that you brought up. 1 and 1 is 2. I don't care what you say. Okay? So we really need, if you're gonna have a board, you need to have a board on that board of education. Say, what are you teaching in our classrooms? We need these children to understand math so they can understand computers and biology and chemistry, and they need to be able to read so they can be poets. What are we producing out of this town? It's a disgrace, and it needs to stop, and you should be embarrassed.
We're on 4 minutes, so
I don't care. I pay taxes every single year, so I'm gonna say my piece, because I have never, ever gotten up in front of a board in the state of, in the city of Hamden, ever, and expressed my madness of what's going on in this beautiful city. The other thing is, you talk about development. And that's where the tax money has to come. It can't come from residential. It has to come from bringing in good jobs into Hamden. Who is our town planner? He needs to be fired, or she needs to be fired.
He's here.
okay. So. Maybe you can meet him afterwards.
I wanted him to stand next to me. I didn't want him to say a word. Okay. We need to bring in corporations. We have a lot of empty spots that we can put in good working jobs for the town of Hamden. And you know what? You said something about, well, you know, we don't want Walmart to pay less money than. Well, how do you get the businesses in? You have to make the deal. And part of that deal is 5 years, you know, you pay less taxes or you get some kind of compensation. We need to do this in this town if you're gonna survive. And if not, you just file bankruptcy and let's go on.
Yeah.
Because that's how bad this town is. And so the people in this, they have a right thing now. We can't afford any more money. You can do a zero tax. They already passed it. They just told us what they were gonna do and that's it. You know, you take it or you leave it. It doesn't make any difference who says anything in here. But it makes a difference for the future of our children in Hamden, for the future of retirees in Hamden, for the future of the firemen, the policemen, and the people that work for the town. And it's not nice to sit up there and get badger all night, I wouldn't like it. But you have to hear these things because we are angry of how this town is being run. And it's not a safe town. It is not a safe town, regardless of where you live.
Okay, thanks very much. So is there any consensus? We want to continue on.
I was just going to address a couple of things. So I agree that education is incredibly important. We're educating the future of this country. And I want to make sure that the schools have the tools that they need to educate our students. There are a lot of different things that have changed over the last 50 or so years. We have more students that have greater needs. We have more households where English is not their first language. And so we have to make sure that students are able to get English classes in our schools. We have more students with special needs who are requiring very intense special education. And I want to make sure that each and every child has a fair education, that they are being educated as much as possible. And I don't think that cutting budgets is the way to achieve those.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not producing.
In fairness, there are folks waiting behind.
I'm happy to see it in my time.
The other thing is the welcoming city. Where are we getting the money to take care of these people socially, medically, and schooling?
Yeah, so.
And they're not taxpayers of Hamden.
So, well, people pay taxes even if they don't own a home. So people who are homeless spend every single dollar of their income. Whatever that is, they are spending every single dollar in this community because they don't have an ability to spend outside of our community. So every dollar is spent here. There are a couple of different ordinances. I think you're referring to housing as a human right. And so we have a lot of different money that we are using to make sure that people have their medical needs met, that we are offering housing as much as is possible. We are utilizing ARPA. We're using ARPA to help pay for housing services, homelessness services. We are also using money that we got from the opioid settlement. This was a lawsuit, class action lawsuit with opioid manufacturers, distributors, and pharmacies. So we are getting some of those settlement dollars. We put that into a fund, and we are utilizing clinicians through Yale Health Services to address some of the people in tents and encampments, people who are homeless, to make sure that their medical needs are met. So that is not falling on taxpayers to provide services to our homeless population. And then I just wanted to mention that our crime stats are down in Hamden. They're down by 8%. There was an article a couple months ago for calendar year 2024, our crime stats dropped by 8%. The biggest drop was in violent crime, which I'm really proud of.
Okay, sir, do you want to?
Sure. My name is Andy Sarietta, and I'm a pretty new resident of Hamden. My wife and I scraped together everything we had and bought our first home in Hamden a couple years ago for ourselves and our 2 foster kids. And it was our dream home, still is our dream home, I guess. Our taxes will be going up $348 a month, which is a little bit of a sticker shock. And I know that because 2 community members scrubbed up all of the data from the town website to make an app so that everyone can see exactly what they'll be paying again. So I don't have a long tenure in the town, but I do understand that you ran on a platform of openness and transparency. And so my first of 2 questions is, why is this meeting only happening now? You knew about this, when you proposed your budget, you knew the tax increase. In fact, you presumably thought it was going to be 3 mils higher before your office discovered that they made an egregious clerical error a couple weeks ago. why not,
2 years in a row.
why not make this happen a month ago, 2 months ago? Why do community members have to make each other apprised of how much their taxes are going to be going up? So that was my first question. My second question is, I would like to be able to trust you that the budget is, as you say, quote, nothing extra and nothing fancy. And you answered a question earlier about salaries that are in the proposed budget. You said that no one is getting a 20% salary increase, and that is factually true. The town clerk will be getting a 14.33% increase, raising that position to $106. That is higher than any surrounding town. And I know that because Chris Ashley did a quick survey of all the other towns. And I'm just wondering if you can justify that, given what you've said about how you're trying to reduce the budget, especially in light of one of your statements from 2020 that you posted on Facebook when the, I think it was the art and marketing director was getting a raise to $90,000, not $106. And you had called that, quote, a pretty steep pay increase during an economic downturn.
That's good. So I think it's important to recognize that that was one salary that was pulled out of a lot of other people not getting considered for salary increases. And it's important that any kind of increase has data to back it up. And so I wanted to make sure that there was plenty of data and that we were evaluating all salaries and presenting as much information as possible. The town clerk, I did not ask for a salary increase. I'm not getting my budget presented, my presented budget does not include and has never included for myself a salary increase. I have never asked for, I have never given myself, I have never received a salary increase. So the salary for the town clerk's office, this is an elected position, and my policy has been to pass along requests to the legislative council. The great thing about legislative council meetings is that they're open to the public. The public can watch deliberation on salary increases. And so it is up now to the legislative council how they decide on the salary increases.
Can I just ask a clarification?
Okay.
Just really quick, on the terms of extra and fancy, 15% is not extra and fancy. I just want to clarify that. 15% increase, 14.3% increase is not something extra and fancy in the budget.
Thank
So I want to just say that the town clerk is an elected position and ineligible for yearly salary increases. So the state constitution says that you can get a salary increase when you are up for election, if it's a 2-year term. And if it's a 4-year term, you can get the increase when you're up for election and after 2 years one time. So you can only get a salary increase every other year. And so it's important to me that for an elected position, the town clerk has the ability to put in a salary increase for herself. I pass that along as a conduit to the legislative council so that they can publicly deliberate any kind of salary increase.
Thank
It's the first part, which is why it's only happening now.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to talk to taxpayers. My budget presentation was also a public meeting. I've been responding to emails, and I thought it was really important to correct a lot of information that's being shared on Facebook and social media. I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to talk to taxpayers. And so I approach communication in a lot of different ways. That has been phone calls, emails. I've talked to the media. I'm also talking to other municipal leaders and scheduling a meeting with the governor to let him know how these revaluations in communities like Hamden, we're not the only ones, how this is impacting taxes in our communities. So there's certainly a lot of work going on behind the scenes. We're also responding to a lot of questions from the Legislative Council, providing them answers to their questions. So, we have this meeting. We're going to be posting the recording. We're also going to be scheduling another meeting by Zoom to make sure that the conversation is very accessible to anybody who is not able to come tonight.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Katz. I am a lifelong resident of Hamden. Actually, 3 generations, my grandparents, my grandparents, my family, my mom and my dad, Robert and Teresa Katz. And I, 3rd generation Hamden resident, over 70 years in what has historically been an incredible town. And was at one point one of the best towns, not in the state, but in the entire nation to live in. The core of my question is, and what I think the majority of people are here tonight to hear the answer to, is not where are you spending money now, where are you dividing out money later. It's for the people that are the investors of Hamden, not the banks, none of that. For the individual taxpayer who is the biggest investor in Hamden's economy, for those that are on the brink of losing their houses. My neighbors just moved here from Bridgeport for a better life. They've got 1 kid, another on the way. I went up to them the other day to talk about this. They said, oh, we had no idea our mortgage was going up by $350 a month. My other neighbor on Social Security called an emergency meeting on Easter weekend to see how they were going to make ends meet going forward. And we want to talk about a stringent budget, not moving money here, not moving money there. The bottom line is, for the individual taxpayer, what are you going to do to make this work? Not a 2-year phase-in, not a 4-year phase-in, because on top of having some of the highest taxes in the nation per state, we have some of the highest taxes in the town alone. And I can't even imagine where this increase is going to put us. I mean, the financial situation for the individual taxpayer is going to be indescribably difficult. I mean, Hamden is going to lose residents. I want to live here. I have friends that would want to live here, but they look around all the neighboring towns, and we want to talk about what other neighboring towns are doing. The matter of the fact is other neighboring towns are making it more affordable and more attractive for young people like me to live here. That's the bottom line. People don't want to start businesses. I mean, you look anywhere else, and I don't want it to be in the town. But the matter of the fact is that for so many people that have seen their taxes raised exponentially year over year over year, how are they going to afford to stay in Hamden? I want to stay in Hamden. I have a wonderful girlfriend I'd love to start a life with and live in Hamden with. But right now, I have no incentive to do that. And for those of us that are on Social Security, for those of us that frankly don't know this, because the town is very quick to ask for more money, it was not very quick to inform everyone that their mortgages could be putting them out of a house in a few years. 2 years, 4 years? I mean, is that why you extended your term an additional 2 years so you could kind of get direct, important questions. Where's the tax burden going? We can't cut taxes, we can't cut spending anywhere else. Where does it go? It goes on the people of Hamden, like it always has. Continually, year after year, our public spending has bankrupted the individual investors in this town. Each single person right here is your biggest investor. And when they come to you and tell you that they are radically upset with what's going on, and you have to bring in, no disrespect, a moderator to help figure out this conversation, there is something significantly wrong. I want to be respectful and give you time to not responding.
Well, I know, what I'm really hoping is people will be respectful of everybody else with questions. So,
They could, anyone could come, any single time.
No, your time's good, your time's up. So, Mary?
I do understand how impactful this budget is. And it is going to be for people to make ends meet. And for people who are on a fixed income, there are people I know who will not be able to pay their taxes. I think it's also important to note that when you're looking at any salary increases, we're talking about less than 0.5% of the budget. It's very minuscule. But I also wanted to address the charter change. I did not propose the charter. I did not put together the people who were part of the charter commission. And I had the same active role that everyone else here did at the ballot box. That was the only part that I played in developing the charter. I did not ask for a 4-year term. It was part of the Charter Change Commission. They put that together and it was approved by the entire town. So I did not give myself an extra couple of years. But I do want to respond to the question about how people can afford this. I know that's difficult. I know that there are people who cannot afford this. It is my job as the mayor to run the town of Hamden. And I am not, you can't cut your way out of a revaluation. You can cut some. It would mean we're cutting services. It would mean that we cannot do all pickup. It would mean that we are cutting positions. The problem that you might see with cutting positions is that because we have minimum staffing requirements, we have required work that needs to get done, overtime could go up. It's a balancing act of having very few people to do the work and a lot of work to do. We are trying to do more with less, and we are open to additional ideas of how to do more with less. And we are always trying to find ways to save money. I'm really, really sorry that the taxes are increasing.
Shame on you! Shame on you! I'm a teacher, I can't afford my house anymore! How dare you sit up there so small? How dare you? I can't afford to live here anymore!
Thank you. This is what we ask folks.
It's hard!
Hi, my name is Diane DeLucia, and I've lived in Hamden 65 years. I have a couple of questions for you. I want to understand why you seem to be more concerned with the homeless population, the safe city thing, than you do with the taxpayers of this town. You kind of look like, oh, well, some people will lose their home. Okay, is that why you set up the park so that people can go live in the park? You're talking about losing your tax base. We're your gravy, and you're overusing it. You need to know how to control things. You talk about the community center. I worked for the YMCA for 10 years. I worked in child development, then I worked with the homeless population. But right now, you need to take care of the people that are doing here. You wanna build a community center on toxic ground? I still believe it to be toxic. My sister-in-law was a teacher there, and she died of cancer 5 years after she worked in that school for 15. Okay? So, how is it gonna be paid for once you say you have this grant money? For the years going forward after it's built, who's gonna fund it? Okay, also, earlier you said when you looked at salaries, that you had somebody look into other towns. Who was that? I did not hear that well.
Pality, Pality.
Okay, now, who is that?
It's an organization that, looks at data,
Is it a free organization?
no, of course not.
So we pay, or I could pick up the phone, or I could go to the town hall of another town and see what they pay. But you pay to have somebody tell you what the salaries are that any of us in this room could have found the answer to. Explain that to me, and how much did it cost?
I would be happy to explain that. So,
Well, are those your questions? Okay, sure.
so in last year's budget, we went to the legislative council and talked to them about the salary discrepancies. And we did an analysis, my office did an analysis of salary discrepancies among neighboring municipalities. And what the average salary is for different positions, town engineer, town planner, public works director, police chief, fire chief. We wanted to make sure that we were paying what the market rate is, because it's important to be able to attract and retain employees. It's also important because this is an election year. I know that just as much as you all know that. And for the next mayor, it's important to be able to have a qualified staff, people who, we want to be able to bring people to the town. A lot of these people are appointed by the mayor. Some of them are, have state statute requirements. Some of them have charter requirements. Some of them are required to do work that is required by state statutes, but it's important to have these positions filled. It's important to have good people doing this work. So we have provided in last year's budget a salary comparison analysis that was done by my staff. We worked with data from the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and they said that they wanted a third-party analysis for the salaries.
Who was they said?
The Legislative Council wanted a third-party analysis of we wanted to make sure that we were providing the information that was requested by the Legislative Council. So we worked with Pality to get all of the salary analysis done. And
how much did it cost?
It was $20,000 to do this.
So that's $20,000 wasted. And I'm sure there's a lot of other.
I wanted to make sure that we took the salary analysis, and I think it would be disingenuous of me to not actually fund that in the budget. I knew that the salary increases were more than was reasonable in 1 year. And so I took the gap in funding and I provided a 25% of the gap that existed in those positions as my proposed salary to essentially phase in the salary increase over time. I think that it's important to pay people what they're worth if we want to make sure that we have good employees. And I think we have really good employees.
Okay, I owned a company for 20 years.
Yeah, in fairness, we'll try and get.
For 20 years, I couldn't afford to give my employees raises, and they understood that because they were involved in the company. Then there were years that I could give them big raises or bonuses. It's the way the economy went. Right now, this economy is in the toilet. I'm not saying that's your fault.
It is not.
But what I'm saying is you have to deal with it. And you have to deal with a town full of people that cannot afford this tax increase. And what exactly is the mill rate that you're going for?
The mill rate for the budget that I proposed is $43.39.
No, that's too much.
So if I could, we're just thinking about the time management, right? We're 9:30. We're not gonna do a bathroom break, I guess. Okay. But what I'd also like you to keep in mind is that in order for us to get through the line and be done by 9:30, right? We also need to be respectful of everyone's time. So please keep your questions to 3 minutes, and that way we'll be, everybody who's online will be able to answer their questions before we finish up. Okay? So yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Catherine Marone. I've been in this town for 43 years. Just speaking about salaries, I retired after 24 years of teaching in another district. When we were flat funded, our steps and our salaries were frozen. So in 24 years, I was frozen 6 different times. And that's just something that we had to deal with. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. And as far as the salaries in the town, you've got contractual salaries that need to be paid, union salaries. The non-contractual salaries, nobody should be getting a raise. Looking further down in the next couple of years, maybe get those little pieces or whatever, but right now, with as thin as this budget is, non-contractual salaries should be getting anything whatsoever. They should be frozen. I sent you an email a couple months ago. And in that email, I specifically asked questions about how can you put a budget together when you have yet to receive, and they were 4 months late to that point, of the audits of your different departments. Where are you getting the funds, or where are you getting the numbers to even look at what they had been budgeted, what they used to put a budget together and then submit it to legislative council and then blame somebody for a mathematical error? That doesn't make any sense. Everybody that has a household knows what money is coming in, what they need to pay out, so that they have money to live on. Right now, your budget doesn't make any sense, because you have yet to receive those audits from your department. The other question that I asked you, and I asked specifically in this email, I want a response from you. I don't want a response from your staff, your whoever in your office about what I'm asking. What I got was a blanket copy of what you put on Facebook as far as what this budget was looking like. You never answered the final question that I put in there. People in this room have already told you, and they've been telling you since you proposed it, they do not want a community center on Michael Whalen property. It is more important that you fix the foundations of these people and the water. And in that email, I suggested to you, because it makes sense, why you're not answering it, why people haven't been talking about it. You have an LA Fitness building in the center of town that is large enough to hold programs for every single person in this town. There is a pool that is in that building. What is the condition of the Hamden High School pool? Has that been fixed and running? You have it right here. You don't have to spend this ARPA money. Take that ARPA money and put the programs in an existing building. I suggested to you, lease the building with a hopeful purchase agreement. That you lease it and that money goes to a possible purchase agreement. You never answered that question, and I have never seen it brought up anyplace.
Wow, that's rational.
Yeah. We received an application for a business to go there.
Why haven't you looked at it? It's been sitting vacant for what, 5, 8 years?
Because it's a piece of economic development that we want the tax money from it. It's a big building. We want people to go in there. We want, we're getting tax dollars from that building, and we want the development. There is an application for a company to come in there.
What company? What kind of company is going to want to go into that building without tearing it down and building something else?
I'm sure they're going to outfit it differently. And that's okay, that's good. That's good for our town as well.
No, it's not, because you're still looking at Michael J. Whalen, which, unless that soil is checked periodically,
That's
which
a
we
requirement
don't
as
know
well.
I still don't believe that there's not toxins coming through that soil.
Okay,
So,
thank you. So,
let me
let her answer the question.
Let me talk a little bit about the soil in Millar. All of the soil was remediated to the Department of Energy and Environmental Standards. All of the toxins that were previously there were toxic by touch, meaning that if you were playing in the soil, that it was toxic for you. Everything has been either dug out, replaced with clean fill, or it has been capped, or it has been capped by pavement or buildings. There's no longer access to the toxic soil. Everything is capped. These are all the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection standards. We have a certificate of completion from DEEP, where they have acknowledged that Regional Water Authority has done their job of remediating all of the soil. That work is done. You can look, it's an exact that property. If you look, so we have on the town's website, a certificate of completion for the property of the old middle school that says that Regional Water Authority completed their remediation.
When was that completed?
Okay, well, we're not doing a dialogue, so,
It was
right, we're asking
completed in
questions
2000.
and answering.
It was completed in 2020, 2021. And we have the certificate that it was reviewed and approved by DEEP in 2023. It is right on the town engineer's website.
Okay, thank you, thanks for your question. Johnson?
Good evening. My name is Donald Moses. I am amazed at the illusionary grandeur that's being presented here in terms of how great things are. Okay. My name is Donald Moses, and I am amazed as to the illusionary grandeur that is being presented here tonight in terms of how great we are doing as a town, or better yet, how great this administration has done. Okay? What I haven't been hearing are statements of facts. I've been hearing a lot of opinions in responding. A statement of fact is, when Mayor Garrett took the baton, the mill rate was 48. The mill rate has increased every single year since she has been in office. Okay? We are the fourth highest town out of 169 in the state in taxes, the fourth highest in taxes. And again, all of this information are statement of facts, can be verified. All right? So, you know, and when you talk about the reason for salaries is to make comparison in reference to other towns. Okay? You look at North Haven, for example. North Haven can easily justify why they may pay their people the kind of money they do. There has been tremendous economic growth in North Haven. Can we say the same?
No.
Okay. Now, the other point that I would like to address is in reference to the contamination issue. And the contamination issue does encompass the sinking homes of the residents. The evaluation that the mayor is referring to, that was done what? You know, again, a statement of fact, okay, over 10 to 20 years ago. And it was done for a commercial perspective. This is a residential community. There are different requirements for that. Okay? So you've had many people stand up here and comment on family and friends that they have lost as a result of the disease that exists or that is created through the contamination. Okay? With people living in these homes, even from the ARPA funds, why haven't we then created a vehicle to at least
provide medical assistance, or at least to examine the health of these people in that community. Okay? Now, my final point on this is, to mention that we can do both, actually Tuesday night was the first time that I've heard that from this administration. And I heard it at the Legislative Council. But if we can do both, what exactly is our priority? Is our priority the well-being of the residents of this town? Or is our priority an image to be able to say that we have built a community center? Because there's $10 million that is allocated to the community center. If we can do both, okay, then why aren't we more interested in the well-being of the residents? Even if we split that $10 million or 16 in half and put half of it towards the residents' well-being, the other half towards the community center, and place the bonding issue of funding on the community center rather than on the residents, which means you're telling the residents to wait for their resolution as opposed to the bonding, as opposed to the community center. My point is, again, something I've always commented on. We need to be aware of the intent behind all of this, okay? And the other thing is, what is our priority? Gentlemen make reference to the residents of this town being the greatest investors, stakeholders in this community. At what point will we basically treat them as if we have an interest in their well-being?
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about economic development that was brought up. We are working with developers, many of them along Dixwell Avenue. There is a developer, a property owner that has 11 acres. And we are working with him to increase his property to the highest and best use. We want to make sure that our commercial properties are increasing their value in Hamden. There are a number of ways that we can make sure that we have the ability to help developers. One of them is with an ordinance that was put to the Legislative Council that allows a tax deferment. So this means that property owners can invest a lot of money to improve their property. We take their increase in the assessed value of their property, and that improvement gets deferred over time, meaning that let's say their improved value, they started with $5 million and they improve it to $10 million. They're always going to pay taxes on that $5 million that they started with, but we're going to phase in their assessment of the improvement over 5 years or 10 years, whatever is approved by the Legislative Council. We also want to make sure that we are increasing the number of businesses that are able to use some of this economic development. So the property owner that I'm working with 11 acres, he is planning on some mixed use property, so residential on top and on the first floor retail. He wants to build a like an indoor food court, so a lot of different restaurants where you can go in and have a lot of variety for kids. And then about 400 housing units at this location. This is really good economic development where we are increasing the best use possible of 11 acres along Dixwell Avenue. We're working with the owner of Morrow Motors to improve that property. We want to make sure that property owners who are willing to invest in Hamden have the opportunity to invest in Hamden. So there is a lot of work that's going on in the planning office, in economic development, and there's a lot that you'll see over the next couple of years. I also want to address what was said about New Hall. And again, the soil has been remediated. So when we're talking about facts, that is the fact. That is what has been relayed from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. People who are continuing to say that it has not been remediated are not basing their statements on fact. And it's important that people understand that we are not building, we are not renovating on property that has dirty soil. We are renovating on property that is a remediated brownfield. We do this all the time.
Rebuilt in the last 20 years. When this all started.
I also want to talk about the well-being of our residents.
The reason-
The well-being of our residents includes making sure that we are improving the town, that we are maintaining the town. It also means that we are taking care of our kids. It means that we are taking care of what our kids do after school, that we are taking care of what our kids do when they are in school. So I know that there are a lot of taxpayers here. There are not a lot of kids here, but we also have to make sure that we are providing opportunity for our kids.
That's what the
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, next question.
Mayor, please listen to the people. We are here tonight because we need you to hear us and what our plight is, not your plan. It's about what's best for us as a whole. Out of many should come one Hamden, right? And I'm so glad that I'm not a politician, because a politician represents special interests. But if you're a public servant, an elected official, you're supposed to represent the needs of the people. And we're telling you that we don't want the community center. We're telling you that our taxes, we cannot afford to have these exorbitant hikes. We're telling you that we don't want to accept this budget in the state that it's in because we don't have viable financial statements to support what has been given to us. I mean, you're saying you've got economic development coming. I want to ask you, what types of businesses are there? Because we, the people of Hamden, do not want to see another smoke shop, another cannabis shop, another liquor store, or a nail salon coming to this town. We need Whole Foods. We need Trader Joe's. We need viable manufacturing. We need people to come here. As I'm standing here, I have so many different things. This isn't even what I wrote down.
Well, you still have a minute and a half.
Thank you, sir. Let me keep going. Because the other question I want to know is, why is the most important position in the town not filled, and that's finance director? Why was this gentleman allowed to pay himself in excess of $100,000 and overtime and make $300,000 in a year? The highest paid town official. That should have been a nationwide search the minute it went vacant. And let me say this, the answer, some people will say, well, nobody wants the job. It's underpaid, we don't offer enough. I, for one, know that I received mail from a very credible, a person that was a professional, and said, I went to the town and told them that I will work for under the base salary to take that position. I was in Walmart the other day, saw a friend of mine. I said, hey, how you doing? He said, good. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm a finance director. I said, the town needs you. He said, I applied. They didn't call me back. And that's the other thing. You mentioned Pouty. I also know Tyler Technologies. Can you tell me where Pouty is out of, where they're located? What state, what town? Yeah, but not Hamden, right? Tyler Technologies, not Hamden, right? While I have the floor, I want to acknowledge 2 Hamden residents that was able to give the people the information that we're standing here with tonight. That's Rhonda Caldwell, 5th District, Legislative Councilwoman. King Joseph, 6th District, Tom Fiddler. That gave us this information so that we would no longer be blind. So I want to know, why doesn't Hamden invest in Hamden residents? Why do we consistently outsource our things that we want from the town when we have very smart, talented, educated individuals who can do the job?
And I agree that it is really important to have people who live in Hamden because they care about the town, they care about the tax dollars, and they want to do right by the town. So we have hired a lot of people from the town. Smoke shops. We have a moratorium on smoke shops now. No more smoke shops can while we write the regulations to control the smoke shops. That is something that's really important to me. There are too many smoke shops. So no more smoke shops can open up. Financial statements. We have a lot of financial statements on the town website. We have revenue and expense reports that are posted monthly on the town website. Our audit is late. Our audit was due in January, and for a number of circumstances, we are running behind schedule. We had to contract with a new auditor. The new auditor didn't have a contract. This is the Legislative Council's auditor, so it's the Legislative Council's contract. The new auditor wasn't under contract until last fall. So the audit was started late. Additionally, we have a new accountant. The new accountant had to get trained on all of our financial systems, on all of our processes, on the thousands of different lines within the budget. The new auditor is up and running now. He's getting through the audit. We have sent our trial balances to the new audit firm. We are meeting with them weekly. They have provided us a list of what we have to put together each week to stay on track, and we will have the audit done by the end of May. There are communities sometimes that get behind on their audits, and they're so far behind that they have to meet with MPAC. There are communities that haven't actually posted their fiscal year 23 audit, and so their fiscal year 24 is even later. Our audit is late, yes, but we are not in a position where it's going to affect year over year. So our next audit will be on time. We have a lot of financial information that is posted to the website. It is at a very basic level so that you can see line by line what the departments are spending on salt, on snow overtime, on police overtime. You can see what HR is spending on tests that they have to put new hires through. You can see so much information in these financial statements. You can see what the run rate is for salaries to make sure that we are not going through our budget too fast. There's a lot of information that's posted online.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor Garrett and Mr. Harkey. So my questions actually are running along the line of, I'm sorry, my name is Eve Cumberbatch. I live at 147 Thornton Street. I've lived in Hamden for 22 years. So my questions are about the finances of the town and about how you came up with a budget. So it is my understanding that the last audit that was completed ended June 2023, and that it had a surplus of 23 million. Okay, so that was my understanding, that there was a surplus of 23 million.
There's a fund, the fund balance was put at 23 million. The surplus would not have been 23 million.
Okay, was there a surplus?
There was a surplus.
Of how much?
I have to look it up. I would say around $10 million.
Okay, so the year ending June 2023 had a surplus of 10 million. Yet, and so that was swept into the fund balance. Part of the reason why we have a better fund balance and a better bond rating, not only because they borrowed against the pensions. So even so, our taxes went up the next year. Even, correct?
Which year?
So the following year, which would be, so ending June 2023, 24. our taxes went up. We don't have the audit yet for the year ending last June 2024. That's the audit that's late, that you say is gonna be done at the end of May. It is possible, and that we are gonna have, we're gonna have another surplus. And yet our taxes went up the year after we had a surplus. They went up again in the budget for this year, which was $299. Even though we don't have an audit yet, we don't know if we have a deficit or a surplus. So you based, the $299 for this year, which we don't even know we needed an increase because we don't have the audit yet for last June. $299 now. I guess you're basing the increase to $313 million off the $299, but we don't have the audit yet. So we don't even know if we need a tax increase, correct? So if the audit's due at the end of May, but the legislative council is supposed to approve the budget by May 17th. If our audit comes back and it shows another surplus, what is gonna happen? Are you going to just sweep that into the fund balance? Or is that gonna be used to decrease the mill rate and get people a rate? How are you, I don't really quite understand, and you said that you know you're like, how are you basing the budget of the next year if you don't have the audit? It's coming off of the proposed budget from the prior year, which is not what we actually spent. So, number one, how can that happen? And if we have a surplus, as I say, will you be giving some refunds? And you're talking about an operating budget and you have all this information on the website every month. Are you calculating then on an ongoing basis, kind of, are we on track for the budget, or are you spending under budget? So do you have an idea if we're gonna have a surplus or a deficit? Those are my questions. I just want,
And
Ma'am?
to do that, I was just gonna ask a question.
Thank you, by the way, for answering.
Thank you.
I would like the answers because I've been waiting for a couple minutes. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so one of the financial statements that I was talking about before, the revenue and expense reports. There is a list of months and months and months of that. One of those months is for June 24, last year, and it's labeled as year-end report. So that has all of the information. It's unaudited, meaning that it hasn't been certified by an auditor. But effectively, it is the same information that you'll get from an audit. So all of that information from fiscal year 24, we have available to us. And so we know that budget ended in a surplus. After we knew that the budget was ending in a surplus, what we did for the current fiscal year, the year that we're in right now, is we cut a lot out of this current fiscal year. We took a scalpel to it and there was a lot cut out. So the current fiscal year that we're in had a mill rate reduction, right? There was a mill rate reduction for the current fiscal year.
From what?
From 56 to 55 in change. It was a small mill rate reduction, but what we're experiencing right now is an incredibly tight budget. So I've talked about some of the different things that we budget for. We have to make sure that we're maintaining our buildings. We have HVAC that is failing in this building, in the government center. And so we have to put in supplemental HVAC in buildings. It has really decimated that piece of the budget. So we are struggling to pay for filters, to replace filters in our HVAC right now. This budget is so trim, the one that we're operating in right now, we can't afford
Get rid of your staff.
things in the current fiscal year. So it's important that we make sure that we're budgeting appropriately for what it takes to run the town. And this is a very trim budget that we're under. This budget will not end in a surplus. In fact, it'll probably end in a deficit. And that's one of the reasons this current fiscal year, it's one of the reasons that we have a fund balance to protect against a deficit.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes.
My name is Yvonne Jones. I'm a Rochford Avenue resident, a New Haven resident first. I've been here for 30 years as a homeowner in Hamden. I'm going to speak to three things and then I'm going to ask my question, because I really only have one question. But I think it's important that I be heard. I've been going to these meetings lately and I speak. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do. I still don't believe that my voice is being heard, nor do I believe the people are being heard. The people of Hamden. You don't hear us. You're not listening. You might hear us, but you're really not listening. When I was growing up, my parents, and I said this the other night at the Legislative Council meeting, when I was growing up, my parents, if they didn't have it, they cut back. They cut back. We couldn't do the niceties. We had to cut back. We had to understand that this is what needs to happen in order for us to survive. I want to speak to bulk trash. Bulk trash pickup. Really, the transfer station is what my issue is.
Right here.
My husband has to take off from his job just to go to the dump. Why? They open at 7:30, he has to be at work at 8 o'clock. They close 11:30 to 12:30, he has a half-hour lunch break. They close at 3 o'clock, he gets off at 4 o'clock. Saturdays, it's open one Saturday a month, and he does a lot of overtime. He does a lot of overtime because we need the money. We need the money to survive in this town. We moved here 30 years ago, and when I first moved here, I thought this was an excellent place to live. Extremely diverse, extremely diverse. Henry Candido and Frank Rizzuti were the legislative council members who represented my district. And they came to my door on a Saturday morning and they spoke to us and they gave us the lay of the land. We invited them in. They were so nice. Anything you need, let us know. We're your legislative council members. We don't have that now. And we haven't had that in a very long time. I want to speak to the community center. I am so against it. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Yvonne Jones. I have a nonprofit organization, Destined to Succeed. We use the acronym to emphasize our vision, desiring every student to increase necessary educational development to succeed. I've been running this nonprofit here for 16 years. I built and created this nonprofit for the town of Hamden because people said our kids didn't have anything to do. You recently said that our kids, in reference to the community center, our kids need somewhere to play basketball. We don't want to play basketball. I'm teaching our kids a lot. Career exploration, education preparation, leadership development, life skills, and mentoring. You know why? The Y closed. I grew up under the Boys and Girls Club. Our parents always knew where we were at. But my issue with the community center, everybody has already said it. Toxic, contaminated land. I worked for the District of Hamden. I worked in that building. My son attended that school. It was horrible. I also worked in the new middle school. And I recall when they said the land was toxic, we gotta get the kids out of there, we gotta move them up to the new middle school, we gotta build a new middle school. And you did that. Not you personally, but it was done. The town did that. And now you're gonna turn around and knock down the school, remediate that soil, but you're gonna leave the gymnasium where you're gonna put kids in that toxic environment. How do you do that? That's question number one. How do you do that? How do you, with a clear conscience, put our kids back on that contaminated land? With a clear conscience. You have children. Your children won't be in there because it's in South Hamden. So your children won't be in there.
And I respect what
I
you're
don't-
saying, but
My 3 minutes are not up. I didn't
there
use my
are
time.
5 minutes left.
I've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes in.
That's okay. I'm
What
gonna
is there, what you
Okay,
have?
can I just-
I understand. No, let me, okay.
I
Let
am.
me just, no, I'm gonna take my time. I'm going to say what I need to say. And what I'm trying to do right now is keep it classy. That's what I'm trying to do. Keep it classy. So please, Mr. Sharkey, give me a moment. Give me a moment. I need my moment. And I'm gonna take my moment. Since you're taking my money, I'm gonna take my money. Speaking of money, I'm a product of the cuts. My job was a federally funded job. My full-time job was a federally funded job. My job got cut. Everybody got cut. Everybody. So I no longer have that full-time job. I run my nonprofit, but I don't get a salary from my nonprofit. This is hard work. I've been doing it for 16 years. And when you sit there all smug, talking about a community center that you want to build, when you have myself, Charles Morrison, Melissa Atterbury Jones, we all run youth programs in this town, for this town. And why wouldn't you invest that money in the people who are on the ground doing the work? We do the work each and every day. I'm very passionate about what I do because in this town, in my organization, we enhance, we enrich, we engage, we empower, and we equip the students for excellence. That's what we do. You haven't even taken the time to sit down with me to find out what the nonprofit was all about and even ask me if we could help the town. We are here to help the town. We don't do this work because we're making a lot of money from it. I don't get a salary. My mortgage is $2,200 a month in South Hamden. $2,200 a month. You're gonna increase my mortgage another $300. I'm not paying it. I'm not paying it. I'll leave that house there. I'm not paying it. You have to find a way to appease the people. You took the job. You knew what you were getting into when you ran for it. So whatever happened prior to you taking office, you already knew it was messed up. You signed up for it. So given that you signed up for it, it's on you. It's not on me, it's on you. You have a responsibility to these people here. Everybody. You have a responsibility to us. This is not an easy job. I'll give you that. It is not an easy job. But you don't make it any easier because now my question, when are you going to be accountable? When are you going to be transparent with us? When are you going to speak to us like we're real people? Humanize yourself and talk to us like we're real people. You're in the same boat we're in, sort of, not really, because your salary is way up there. My salary is way down here. But trust me, I will survive. Because guess what? My people, we do that. We survive. We know how to survive. But why should I have to when I moved to a town and I bought into the American dream in Hamden? I bought into the American dream. And now that dream is a freaking nightmare. A freaking nightmare. When are you going to be held accountable?
So I'm just mindful of the time, and I'm seeing that there are
I took her 3 minutes.
five people in line after you. So I'm asking that if we can agree that those who are at the mics now will have their opportunity to ask their question, but that we should plan for being done at 9:30 or thereabouts, So if everyone can be respectful of everybody else's time, just keep the folks here, give them a chance to speak.
Just
and
out
we'll move
of
quickly.
respect for you, I don't even know how you can have this forum until 9:30. This is a real issue. There were a lot of people in this.
Could we please
There were a
be
lot.
respectful? Please?
Like I said.
Thank you.
I'm going to very quickly address
So we're 9 minutes into your question.
So,
Thank you.
so the hours at the transfer station, yes, they are not what is helpful to everybody. It is another way that we are able to cut the budget by not providing overtime to man the transfer station. So the hours, they're not great, I agree with you, but we would have to pay overtime to keep the transfer station open for longer hours. It is a budget cut. The hours are determined by union contracts.
Why don't you shift the days, Mayor Garrett? Why don't you shift the
I
days?
can't, they're determined by union contract. We would have to pay overtime to keep the transfer station open more days and more hours. We have invested in youth programs. We have used some ARPA money to invest in youth programs. We also invest in youth programs within our operating budget. And we pay for people who live in Hamden, who run Hamden youth programming in Hamden.
Contracted by the town, no doubt.
Yes, we pay for youth organizations that are Hamden-based youth organizations in Hamden. We have a lot of different schools in Hamden that have all been remediated, that have all been abated. All of the schools that all of our children have attended within the town of Hamden have all been abated, remediated buildings. That is the same type of work that we will be doing at the old middle school. The building that is the former academic building does have to get demolished. It is in horrible condition. We have a grant to demolish that building. We're using ARPA funding, which is not the same as the operating budget, has no impact on your mill rate. That is money that we can use to remediate, abate the old gymnasium building. There's also a lot of planning that's going into place to make sure that we have more than just a gymnasium. We're building out spaces for mental health services for our kids. We are building out a kitchen so that kids can learn how to cook, so that families can learn how to cook.
My nonprofit offers cooking.
That's great.
My nonprofit offers mental health and wellness.
So those are some of the things that we are proposing in the youth center.
We already have it.
And I think that it is incredibly important to invest in youth programming.
You don't invest in my youth program.
Okay.
Is that
Thank you.
personal?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wait.
Hi, my name's
Providing
Elaine.
you a grant.
My name's Elaine Dove. I live on Santa Fe Avenue. I've lived here for a long time, and I've been through a lot of mayors, seeing what they've done, what they haven't done. And we've had 2 female mayors, well, I should say 3. One was a Republican, but she didn't do much. In between the 2, she didn't. She was a nice person, but she was only there for 2 years. Don't get excited. I can tell that this is a very, very politically oriented group. Thank you for your attention. So I would like to say that the 2 female mayors that we've had have worked tirelessly in getting us out of the monetary messes that they were presented with when they started. So they, quote, may have signed up for it, but you don't know, that's not something you sign up for. It's a life, it's a duty. That's what I would call it, it's a duty, and it's not a fun duty. So I would like to say thank you, Mayor, for taking on this job. In the meantime, I would like to say that I'd like to see many. Will you please give me the time? Thank you. In the meantime,
Please be respectful.
in the meantime, I'd like to say many people here have made some very good suggestions. And I hope that you will take them under consideration and that we can work together. I want everyone to think about, we think about how terrible it is here in Hamden. First off, all of our property has gone up in value. So therefore, we pay more taxes on things that are more valuable. So that's gonna happen over a 30-year period. Secondly, I don't know how many of you are concerned. I am very concerned about the national policies on economics that are going on now. I am concerned that we will have worse situation next year and the year after. And when that happens, hopefully you will not be blaming the mayor for the general situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Kelly. I've lived here for over 30 years. First time I've attended one of these meetings. I'm kind of kicking myself for not having done it before. All right, let's start. The mill rate was 55.61. Where does that rank in the state of Connecticut? Where does the new mill rate, 43.39, rank? And despite cutting that, it's going up. The dominoes are going to start to fall tonight, because when people can't live in their houses anymore, and they sell it, there's going to be a lot of houses on the market in Hamden, and we're going to be stuck for the next 5 years with this assessment. And in the next 2 or 3 years, the values are going to go down, and then we're going to be stuck with a mill rate that goes back up to the roof because there's no money left on the houses to tax. All right, I'm not an economist, but I can see that coming. If you keep this going, it's going to go so far down you can't believe it. So what are your property taxes? In my 30 years, they have almost quadrupled. This year, it's going to go up $141 a month, $825 a month. I'm lucky that I don't have a mortgage that it's paid off, that I'm not in some of the position that these other people are. It's gone up 28% in just the past 5 years of these assessments. Okay. First time I ever heard tonight about this being a welcoming town. I was in law enforcement for 25 plus years. When you open the door, you bring in the baggage, the pain, and the suffering, and the drain on services. It's a losing battle. People also kind of touch on it in my last point. You're the mayor. You're the CEO of Hamden. You weren't forced to be it. You said, I can do this job. You knew what you're walking into. And we're your shareholders. And if you can't make a solution, the shareholders will speak. Thank you.
My name's Carol Christmas. I live in.
No answers?
And I want to thank you, Mayor.
No response?
So you can look up my property taxes. I live at 47 Andover Road.
Why can't you just say it? Why can't you tell us what I asked Hamden about, and they're very high, and I will defend her. They're actually pretty high, and I was like, damn. So as someone that's actively working against talking about what's going on, I think we need to not attack on those things. They're high. And she can say it then. What are your
Okay,
questions?
so are you satisfied? I didn't see her question. I thought there was more of a comment. So
Yeah,
is there a
I
question?
asked her, what are things we're in? What does she think about the dominoes falling? Does she think that's the truth?
Okay.
It's gonna happen.
I think that it's really important that we have a lot of opportunities for economic development, and that is what I work really hard to make sure that we are prioritizing. We are utilizing bus rapid transit up Dixell Avenue to make sure that we have the opportunity for people to invest in commercial properties. I talked about how we are working with the owner of Morrow Motors. We're working with the owner that has 11 acres on Dixwell Avenue. We are working with other developers. We have people coming into the town every day of the week to look at different properties for commercial development. If we can get more commercial development in Hamden, we can flip this situation so that we have commercial properties increasing in value for the next revaluation.
But the houses are gonna be in the dump. You're not gonna,
So-
the mill rate's gonna go up.
So there are a lot of ways to look at your assessed value. You can be really happy that the assessed value increased so that your property is worth a lot more, but also frustrated because it means an increase in your taxes. You can look at a decrease in your valuation favorably if you think that means your taxes are going to come down, but I think it's good to have property values at a higher level, because that means that your property is
You're
worth
missing the
that.
point.
It is a seller's market, you can sell
What
it
it-
for that value. You can sell it for more than the appraised value.
And then buy what? Then buy
How about
what?
the welcoming?
There's not even houses to buy.
Okay, hello. I'm Carol, I'm from Springland. I've lived here for 30 years. And I recall back in 2005, we had a revaluation with a different mayor and the taxes doubled. We formed a tax group, Hamden Alliance for Responsible Taxes. It was bipartisan. We voted for the Republican mayor at the time. We just barely lost the election. However, we went to Mayor Henrici and we asked for a phase-in, and he refused. So I want to say too, I think this is a wonderful forum. I know it's been very difficult, and I hear the anger. I know the anger is it's real, and it's larger than Hamden. It's national. And maybe you don't want to hear that, but I think that a lot of it is being focused here. And it's an opportunity for people to express their anger, and I appreciate that you've done this forum. I hope you do others, because there's lots to be heard from here, and a lot of great ideas are coming out. And please be respectful. So what I want to ask you, since the former mayor wouldn't give us a phase-in, however, you have opened the door for the possibility. So you said at one point you were going to talk about that, and I know time's running out, but could you give a couple of paragraphs about that?
Sure. So I have released in an email the different phase-in options. We are still working with OPM, the Office of Policy Management, with the company that sends out our tax bills, QDS, with the company that holds the data for all of our assessed values, Vision. We are working with all of those companies to find out what the different possibilities are. There are 3 different phase-in approaches, and they're all very technical in nature. The first one is the most commonly used, where you take your grand list and you phase in over, you can do 2 years, for 4 years, for 3 years. It's totally up to the legislative council and my administration to figure out what is the best for taxpayers. And so you're taking a look at the increase in your assessment. Let's say your increase was $100,000. So you add, for a 4-year phase-in, $25,000 to the base that you started at for your assessed value. You add $25,000 to that assessed value every single year. You have to adjust the mill rate because of the changes to the grand list. And it's one way that you can phase in kind of the harm. You can phase in the impact of your tax increase. It is not a solution that prevents us from getting to the full grand list, to the full assessed value. It just makes it so that it doesn't hurt quite so much in the first or second year, depending on the approach that's used. There's a way that you can phase in the grand list where it's slightly different for residential and commercial. We are still working with OPM to fully understand the parameters around that. The town of Hamden has never had a phase-in before, and like I said, the phase-in that is commonly used is option 1, which I explained. There is option 3, which is a little bit different, and no one has ever used it. So we need more information on that. The other thing that's a little bit challenging that we're faced with right now is that we don't know from what the legislative council is working on which grand list we're going to end up using. We don't know if we're going to have a phase-in yet. And after all the dust settles, we have to send to QDS, who sends out our tax bills. We have to tell them what the assessed value is for each property and the mill rate. And so all of that information has to get uploaded. And we're on a little bit of a time crunch here, so we need to be able to administer whatever plan the council puts in place, and in a very tight timeline to do that.
And then all this has to happen before July, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the one thing I want to make clear, and I am aware of, I don't know if it's common knowledge, but you are not responsible for the assessments or the reevaluation. If whoever sat in that chair, whoever is the mayor at this time, would have to deal with the responsibility of what Hamden's taxes are. And you didn't raise the taxes.
Thank you.
The revaluation is an assessment of the market value. The market value is not something that I can control. That is a regional and national issue. So I appreciate that. The revaluation is something that is definitely hurting us, but it is a fair assessment of market value.
And it's mandated by the state.
It is fully mandated by the state, yes.
My name is Teresa Katz.
Second?
My name is Teresa Katz. I live at 17 Beaver Street for about the last 40 years. And my question is, what plan do you have to offer taxpayers immediate relief from the large increases in our taxes? And when are we going to know? Because I need time to plan my budget. I am the person that plans the budget for my family. And I plan for incremental increases because the prices of things increase every year. But I haven't planned for I won't say how many thousands of dollars tax increase or hundreds of dollars per month in addition that we will have to pay. And it's the reason why I feel so passionate about this is because it will greatly affect my family's quality of life. And I'm concerned about my neighbors who are concerned whether or not they're going to be able to continue to live in their homes. And I have heard, and I thought long and hard on whether I'd share this, but a representative, and I'm not sure the name, suggested to a neighbor that a solution would be to sell your home. Now, for me personally, my home is my biggest asset. It's our largest investment. And we take a lot of pride in it and in our community. And I'd like to keep our community together. So if there is some relief that you could give us so that we have time to say, okay, this is what we're dealing with. How am I going to do this? How am I going to, what changes can I make so that it's affordable? And just one comment, because I know we're short on time, but as far as, thinking about my home value, I don't know how much, I know from probably economics and accounting perspective, it makes a big difference. But I don't see how this increased assessment is going to change how much I would be able to put my house on the market for. But what I am concerned about is, I heard that, some raw data on a national level, that when taxes go up significantly, it can significantly affect how much you be able to sell. And a 10 to 20% less that the value of my home would be significant. And it's a little bit hard to swallow when we feel like we've worked our lifetime.
Thank you. Mary?
Thank you.
So the assessed value, so if you look at what was sent to you from the town for your appraisal and your assessed value is 70% of your appraised value. So your appraised value is what you should be able to sell your home for. And what we've seen from market conditions, even still, is that prices remain quite high. People who are listing their homes in Hamden are listing their homes for above what the appraised value is. Yes. And so, so your home does have a lot of value. And I hope you stay. I hope that people stay in Hamden. I think that the people are what make this town great. And we want to make sure that, we're continuing to encourage more people to come to Hamden. There is a housing shortage in our region, and we want to make sure that we have more affordable housing to support that need.
And I appreciate that, because my family has been talking about this for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I feel if I leave tonight and I go to my husband who's working, and tell him that I don't have an answer, I haven't done my job. What relief, what immediate relief are you going to be able to offer us? Is it going to be, let's put a hold on things until we get our audit done and until all the dust settles, and we'll give ourselves a little bit, the council, the mayor's office, a little bit more time to think about it? Or can we at least do some type of phase-in so that people can absorb that initial kind of hit and then have another year or 2 years to figure out, okay, what are we gonna do differently so that we can afford this?
So there are a few things that can help. The phase-in is one of them. And we are watching what the state is doing in their budget negotiations. What is passed out of appropriations is more favorable to the town of Hamden. They're increasing municipal aid and, they're increasing education dollars in what is coming out of the state. If that budget gets approved, that could help us.
So it sounds like we should plan for, if it looks like I have a $4,000 a year tax increase, that's what I should plan for.
No, not necessarily. And the legislative council is deliberating the budget right now, and I imagine we'll make some cuts. And if between cuts and phase-in and state aid, that could significantly help. And so we are trying to make sure that, we're cooperating with the legislative council to make that happen. They are waiting on more information. And this is a very technical process because of all the different pieces that we're putting together. And so they have bumped out the date that is possible to conclude their budget deliberations to the beginning of June. So typically the budget has to be finalized by May 17th. They bumped that date out. And so we'll have more answers. I believe their budget has to be voted on by June 5th. So that, I think that's when we can expect to know a lot more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, last question for you. Thank you.
Okay, hello. This is hard to remember. My name is Grace Teodosio, and this is our first time meeting in person, which is kind of awkward for me because I've been talking about the town finances, and I want to start by saying that I try to be firm but fair. I think you have a really hard job. I think you walked into a really big mess. I don't think this is all your fault. I think we need to be realistic with what we're saying. So I wrote something that I'd like to share because I have some questions that I'm hoping to get some answers to. So some of you may know me as the founder of an online Facebook group called Hamden Residents Unite, and I have written publicly about our town's finances on our Substack. I'm not trying to cause trouble. It's because I believe in the power of truth and transparency, and I believe it can mobilize people and create change. It's one of the reasons I think we're all sitting here tonight. I want to start by acknowledging how difficult this job is and how much of a crisis you inherited, as I said. That is real. I want to be clear, I have no personal or political agenda. Professionally, I am a trained and paid data analyst and business strategist, so I'm trained and paid to get to the root of numbers. Over the past month, I've spent countless hours with council members, finance chairs past and present, and financial professionals in my life and in my work environment, and have rigorously analyzed our town's fiscal reality. What I've uncovered is deeply troubling. Either our financial crisis is much worse than the public has been told, or the administration is quietly focused on rebuilding our fund balance more than is necessary, possibly to improve our bond rating without being fully transparent about it. I actually think it's the former. I think things are worse than people know. I do not think that the aim is necessarily to be malicious, but I think we need to talk about what's going on. My main concern is not that we are in a dire financial issue, it's that solutions were not explored until after residents spoke out. And those phase-in options were not put on the table until then. You did know that this would be damaging to a lot of people. Perhaps you didn't expect that the residential would be much higher than the commercial. I'm not sure. That could have been a very real factor, but it is concerning. Even more concerning is the ongoing lack of up-to-date financial statements and a completed audit. In my private company, this level of opacity would be unthinkable because transparency is the bedrock of good decision-making. And the timing of these decisions, lowering the mill rate and shifting tax burdens in an election year, doesn't sit right with many residents, myself included. Whether intentional or not, it feels like the truth is being managed and not shared. It feels as though you waited for the revals as a perfect cover to hide how bad our situation really is because it would be politically unpopular during an election year to tell the truth. Mayor Garrett, you spoke tonight about making tough choices. Please stop interrupting me. I've listened to everyone with respect, and I'm speaking with respect. I believe residents can handle the truth even when it's hard. I do see the pushback you're getting tonight, but I think it's because we don't have all the facts in front of us. We're talking a lot about public works, and those things are important, but I don't think people realize how bad things are. Bulk pickup isn't on the table, guys. It's not. It's not like they're taking these things away from you because they want to. And I'm not saying this in defense because I've been very, very vocally critical, but my ask is simple. What is currently in our fund balance? And if you don't have the numbers, why? Why was the audit not completed before even attempting to do the budget? And lastly, why was the finance department allowed to be run by a bare bones crew, amassing incredible amounts of overtime while being unable to deliver? Thank you.
All right, so let's first talk about staffing in the finance office because that is a large part of why our audit is late.
I get it.
So we had an accountant, and it's primarily the accountant who reconciles all the accounts and prepares everything for the auditors. The accountant that we had for 10 years left. During that time, we also had the person who was managing HR was retiring. And so there was a vacancy in HR, which is how all of the hiring gets done. And so it took longer for us to hire the accountant because HR was not running very efficiently. We brought in outside help to manage HR during a transition period, and then hired a great HR director who has been great about testing, creating tests that are specific to job descriptions to make sure that we get really great candidates in. It took a few months to hire that accountant. And then it's important that the accountant understand our financial systems, primarily the software that we use, and have full understanding of the budget. And so that has taken probably 6 months for all of the training to occur. And so we are in much better shape now because of all the work that has gone into making sure that our accountant is up and running. During that transition time, we have a great deputy finance director who, yes, has been paid a lot of overtime to manage all of these vacancies and do the work of several people. He's done a great job at that, but things have fallen behind. I have an interview tomorrow for a finance director that is very promising, and I'm very hopeful that we can bring that person in. It is definitely challenging getting everything done with the few people that we have in a lot of departments. It doesn't make a lot of political sense for me to increase people's taxes during an election year. It's a really bad platform to have when you're increasing taxes substantially during an election year. This is not my favorite thing. It makes it a lot harder for me to run for re-election when people are legitimately angry about their taxes going up. And then I also want to address the fund balance. I mentioned earlier tonight that the current fiscal year is going to have a deficit. Okay, we have talked about that in front of the Legislative Council, and so we know that that is coming. The fund balance also had, the level that the fund balance was at for the previous audit was a little higher than it needed to be, and so we used some of the fund balance for the current fiscal year's budget that was built into the budget last year. And then we also have the audit coming that will be completed by the end of May. So with all of that kind of coming in and going out, we are projecting that our fund balance, all said and done, and this is unaudited because we'll have audited numbers that will be higher than we're anticipating. So in the fund balance report, you have an audited fund balance number, you have a projected incoming budget surplus, and so some of this is unaudited, but we're projecting that it'll be around $22 million, all said and done. This was communicated at the council meeting last Saturday. So that's where we're at.
I do have one follow-up question, and this is just the thing after hearing you speak, and I really appreciate your thoughtful replies. And I'm not really trying to get you in like a gotcha movement, but I'm not gonna make any speculation up here. I will say, I totally agree, it's not popular to raise taxes during a year. I wonder, if that's an interesting situation. With that said, if you did anticipate the high cost and we didn't have the actual audit, so we don't know if we spent everything, maybe it wouldn't be as worse, it does seem like a legal viability to go to the state and say, hey, can we push this old budget through for last year, buy yourself some time and hire staff to kind of, or even an auditing firm, or not an auditing firm, a finance team to kind of come in and help. Because what if you're actually asking for a lot more money than you need? I don't know if you are, because the truth is I think it's not that great. But what if you are? And what if it could have saved us a couple $100 on, or someone $100 a month? I feel like that's the responsible thing, and that would be the proactive thing to protect residents. So that's kind of where it falls apart from you.
So I also said that we meet with MFAC, the Municipal Finance Advisory Commission. We meet with them every 2 months. And so we do go to the state. They are a commission of OPM, the Office of Policy Management. We do meet with them every 2 months, and we talk about the current fiscal year, next fiscal year, the previous fiscal year. They are reviewing all of our financials. I also will have a meeting in the next couple of weeks with the governor's office. I have, because I know that a lot of other municipalities are experiencing the same thing with the grand list, I reached out to other municipalities like West Haven, North Haven, Wallingford, Bramford, Woodbridge, who are all in the middle of a reval right now and seeing the same situation where taxes are going up, in some cases $3,000 a year for people. And so I wanted to make sure that we were all working together. So I've been coordinating with those mayors and first selectmen, and I reached out to the governor's office to schedule a meeting with all of these mayors so that we can tell the governor, look, the environment that we have with market conditions is really hurting people. What are you going to do about it? So we are definitely working with the state to try to find a solution here. And your other question about delaying the implementation of the grand list is something that we are also talking to our state delegation about, and deciding if that is something that we want to do. I know that in, I believe it was Trumbull, they are trying to delay their grand list because they didn't complete their grand list from a phase-in. And so their legislation is going to look differently than the legislation that we would need. So it's important that we see what the legislation looks like before committing to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Gary, you might have answered this, but I just want to know, what was the fund balance for 2024? So you might have answered it, but I didn't hear. Do you know what the fund balance is?
I would have to look it up.
I'm sorry?
I would need to look that up. I don't have every number in front of me.
All right. Thank you. So I just want to finish. Thank you for everyone who's here. Thank you for coming out, for expressing yourself and being respectful. But most importantly, I would ask that you also thank the mayor for holding this meeting to all learn more about what's actually happening. Thank you.